All right, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Machach. That belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopefully elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim, that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the pre-Shemon, this week's topic is going to be entitled, What the Hell is Going On? A lot. You know, Salaki, these past two lessons, I've kind of had to redo them because the audio wasn't there. And man, the way this man is moving, this man being Donald Trump, there's so much shit happening that, you know, the moment you try to do a lesson, like, you can't get backlog, bro. You know, this is not a time to say I don't have any left, because it's just so much stuff coming out. So I'm going to address a few things that's in the news, you know, where lines and prophecies, my take speaking as a man, and then I'll just go back to these scriptures from the last lesson. I'm pressed for time, so I'm just hoping the Spirit of Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai, this lesson could be informative. So first things first, what's in the news? Let's talk about, another plane crash, right? So you had a plane crash that happened out there in, was it Arizona, I believe? Arizona or Missouri? So far, these plane crashes do look organic, at least when I do my due diligence. For example, the most recent plane crash, they didn't have a control tower, so there was no mediator. The pilots were talking in between each other. The one in Toronto, a lot of people are saying is DEI situation, because there was that Delta airline was specifically trying to get unmanned and a whole bunch of women and stuff like that. And you saw how that turned out. The flight from Minneapolis to Toronto, they tried to bank, and the right wing got completely destroyed, and the wind turned it over. Nobody died. I was watching a clip from The View, and it was just like, you know, this is happening under Trump. I've seen some people like that too on the left say things like that, which it just doesn't make any sense. I don't see how Trump has anything to do with these plane crashes. In fact, and this is just the data, there were more plane crashes in Biden's first 4 weeks than Trump's. That's just the data. But one thing I've realized with the media is they could really have your perception be what it want to be by what they bombard you with on the TV. For example, they've swapped out plane crashes with drones. Remember when drones was a thing? Drones. You do a little DD, due diligence. The FAA approved flying drones at night, so there's more drone sighting in the night. That was my take, and turned out to be accurate. You know, this one too, same thing. They're bombarding that in the media, but when I do my personally due diligence, the plane crashes seem organic. I don't know what sort of narrative they're trying to create with flashing that about. So that's the whole plane crash thing. What else? $5,000 from dividends from whatever Doge saved to be given out to Americans. Quickly, I'm going to explain that. So the Doge team, one, Elon Musk is not controlling the United States. I've seen that. He's an advisory on the Department of Government Efficiency. He doesn't have any political power. That's all Scott Bessent. He's the U.S. Treasury Secretary who answers to Trump. So he doesn't. I mean, and if he does have any influence, I don't see what he's doing right now to influence anything apart from doing an audit, which is something that they were going to do. And it's also very interesting too that the audits that's going on, the Democrats did the same thing. You know what I'm saying? There's clips of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton saying the same thing, that look, we're going to audit our federal government. We're going to see where this money is going. And also when the acting Treasury Secretary said he doesn't want to give that information to Elon Musk because it's personal information, yada, yada, yada. I was like, that's bullshit. I think that they're holding that back because you're going to see a lot of money laundering going on, which also came to pass. Because why else would you not want to be audited, right? Unless you're doing some sneaky shit. So that $5,000, the way it's supposed to be is they wanted to make 20%. 20%. They wanted to give out 20% of a dividend in whatever they saved. 20% going back to the taxpayers and 20% going back to paying down debt. And where does that 5,000 number come from? Well, the Elon Musk projected to do $2 trillion in the next couple of years in terms of getting rid of fraud. 20% of $2 trillion is is it 800 million? No, I'm sorry. The 2 trillion. So the 20% of the 2 trillion should be 400 billion. My math is kind of tricky, but that 400 billion divided up into the American household will equal to $5,000 checks. which I think they'll probably distribute that throughout the tenure of the audit, or just give you one large lump sum, which shit, I'll take it. Cool. Would that raise inflation? I mean, that would definitely increase a lot of buying and stimulate the economy, and that would lead to a bit of inflation for sure, because, you know, these companies would raise the prices due to the fact that all this money is coming in and we don't have the supply. One thing that they've been doing to curb inflation, and I also said this, is just look at the price of gas, man. If gas goes down, because, you know, under Trump's first term, the Feds raised rates 8 times, and he was doing this whole tariff thing. All that stuff was playing out, but inflation didn't go up. You know why? Because drill baby drill, right? And you're seeing that at the gas pump. And the way that works is, if you go to the gas pump and it costs less to fill your gas, guess what? You have more money to yourself, and that increases your buying power. So I was speculating there's 2 possible ways it turns out, whoever, based on whoever won the election. If Biden came in, things will continue to be on a decline, prices will continue to be very expensive, endless wars. And the thing with the Biden wars or the Obama wars is Lockheed Martin, these particular companies, they love to find us conflicts. They don't want wars to end. You know what I'm saying? Because you're milking the cow. But I said if Trump win, me speaking as a man, I think 1 Thessalonians 5:3 is going to take place, wherein this place is going to go up, go up, go up. And when you have that sense of peace and safety, then boom, all right, a black swan event, whether organic from the Most High or some synthetic shit they create, you know. Which, speaking of that, is going to be very hard to do another black swan, because people now are very skeptical of the things that they see. You know, 1 Corinthians 2:11, people are pretty much applying that, where they're not being ignorant of Satan's devices. And you got people now, even if a school shooting happened, oh, I don't believe it. Like, people are not believing a lot of shit, which is also a psyop in itself, right? Because if you effectively don't believe anything that the news puts out, it's the same thing as believing everything the news puts out. It's the same psychological operation, you know. So you have to filter everything. You have to filter the conspiracies the same way you filter things on the news. I can't stress that enough. Seen a bunch of shit on the internet with no sources, people just posting whatever. Oh, the Clintons took $85 billion from USAID. That's not accurate. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a bunch of stuff being bombarded on the internet, that we have to be very skeptical of what we're reading and do our research into things. Now, let me get into this real quick. Obadiah 1:7. It says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. So all the men of the Confederacy, those are the Confederate America, that these deals with America eventually will turn their back on America. When the tariff situation was first came out, I said that tariffs, one, would not be inflationary, because inflation is an increase of the money supply. China can't do that. Canada can't do that. None of these nations could do that because they don't have a U.S. press mint. They can't print money, you know. So, and also with the tariffs, I also said that these nations would capitulate. So EU just capitulated on automobile exports. So they dropped theirs to 2.5%, because the tariffs, the way that he's running it, is supposed to be reciprocal. Basically, whatever you charge us, we're going to charge back to you. And a lot of these nations did capitulate, because the United States is number one. Okay, 85% of the GDP in the United States is domestic, so they don't really need these imports from these other nations as much as the other way around. So these nations have agreed to move their factories into the United States to avoid these import taxes, these tariffs, which is going to, you know, boom America up more, if you will. But one thing Donald Trump said in this particular meeting, he said every leader, all right, should put their country first, and these nations will put their country first. You know, it's about time that America has their own version of a nationalist, because I always say these other nations, they have their nationalists. Vladimir Putin is a nationalist to Russia. Xi Jinping's a nationalist to China. Biden was not a nationalist to America. He didn't do things in America's best interest. Now that you have a guy that's doing things in Americans' so-called best interest, that creates a higher probability, all right, of conflict, because as you can see, he's not being paid off or doing deals with China or backdoor deals with Ukraine and shit like that. If it fucks America, it's fuck you. So he's putting Israel first, as all presidents do. They bend their angles for Israel, and he's putting America first. That's what's happening, okay? And that just fuels scriptures like Revelations, the 17th chapter, going into the NATO and the EU, okay? Because NATO and the EU has taken advantage of some of these deals with America. And scriptures like we're reading now, all right? It says, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread, eating your bread, breaking bread was in the ancient world a way of creating a covenant, right? It's called the covenant of bread and salt. You know, bread meaning we're going to break bread, establish as a covenant, and the salt means it's going to be preserved because salt was used for preservation. We didn't have ice back in the days, right? It says, I mean, we had ice, but we weren't using it for like a refrigeration kind of thing. It says, and prevailed against thee, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, right? So these nations will eventually come together to take America down. And that's the only way it's going to happen, you know, because if you look at the United States, it's far more the most powerful military. Just look at how much we put in the military. The United States, 600 billion. China, what, puts 200 billion? So the Americans invest so much in their military. You have the world reserve currency. You have the highest GDP. It's a very powerful nation. And individually, these nations can't compete. You know what I'm saying? But if they come together, then, you know, shit could pop off. It says, and this is Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. Right, going into NATO and the EU, and these different EU nations and are having these speeches, sort of going against, not going against, but respond to J.D. Vance, who's saying these European nations have lost their free speech. They're becoming more totalitarian. He pretty much sort of slammed them. He also threatened that America will leave the EU if EU nations were to ban X. You know, like I said, I mean, Elon Musk purchasing X was like a black swan event itself, because, you know, it's one of those few sites that you actually hear both sides. And people sought alternative media throughout the whole election instead of going through mainstream media, legacy media, because a lot of shit the legacy media was saying wasn't standing on any foundation. And so, you know, like I said, it's you could just upload shit there. It's very unadulterated, man. It says, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right, so thermonuclear destruction is coming to this place. And you know, you got a guy now that's very candid. You know, like, look, I'm not iffy about Palestine, Israel. No, I stand with Israel. I'm not iffy, shaky about, you know, putting sanctions and tariffs on nations. No, 100% tariff, just using that shit, you know, using the hell out that leverage. And like I said, also, you know, he's using a tariff as a leveraging tool. You know, I doubt he wants to do a trade war, because these nations don't want. Who wants to do a trade war with America when you don't have any leverage? America has a leverage in this deal. So the negotiation tactic that Trump does, typical real estate shit or out of the deal shit, is he'll make these very high ass claims, okay? Like, are we gonna go to a trade war with Canada, all this type of stuff? These very high claims, okay? Just to negotiate down to the middle, when the middle was all he wanted in the first place. So that's a tactic that they do. So he wanted more troops on the border, and that's what he got. He didn't want to pay for it, and that's what he did, you know, by putting the standards up there. So when they negotiate it down, you're back to where you want to. It's negotiating tactic. It's pretty smart. It says, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right, thermonuclear destruction. You know, I had Ezekiel 38. The first chapter. Don't have much time, man. I had to cram so much. I only really got out like 2 scriptures then there. Fuck. This is what happens, man, when you backlogged. But Ezekiel the 38th chapter pretty much going into Russia being a guard onto these particular nations in the Middle East, because you know, there's peace negotiation talks with Russia and the United States, and Vladimir Zelensky is not being put in that. He's upset. Vladimir Zelensky, man, him and Biden, they were doing a bunch of fucking money laundering. Trump came in, stopped that shit. And Vladimir Zelensky is a con artist in a sense, because, you know, he wants the war with Russia to continue. Why would he want peace? Because if there's peace, the country will no longer be in a state of martial law. And when the country is in a state of martial law, guess what? When the country's in a state of martial law, then elections are frozen. So they can't do new elections, and he sits in power. Now that there's supposed to be peace, they could open up their elections again, and he'll be out of there. I want to jump to verse 10, Ezekiel 38 and 10. It says, and this is concerning Russia, because, you know, the Lord will put hooks into the jaws of the Russian people, all right, to be just like how they were during the Soviet times. You saw Crimea was once a part of Russia. And a part of the deal also negotiated with Putin is that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO. Why would it be? Because it edges the border. So Trump is saying that's not going to happen. If you notice, Trump and Putin are very diplomatic. However, when you read Ezekiel 38 and 10, it says, "Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai," it says, "It will come to pass that at that same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought." Right, so the Most High is going to put an evil thought into the mind of whoever's running Russia at the time, whether it be Vladimir Putin or another leader or what have you, all right, to say, look, to hell with these peace negotiations, to hell with whatever deal, and they're going to shoot missiles upon America. And that you know, like think about it, like there's been many deals that the United States have done and brokered with Russia that they reneged on. So it only takes something like that, you know, reneging on a deal, anything could happen, but we know that they will at some point turn their back on whatever deal they might establish, or peace agreement they might have with the United States, and go to war with the United States. They're going to leave the charge, and these other nations are going to join them. And that also stems back to what's going on over there in Israel, because I spoke about it that Trump wants to go into Gaza and rebuild Gaza. And it's kind of crazy how the so-called Jew, which are not the real people of the Lord, they destroyed that whole Gaza Strip, bombed it, and then it's going to have the United States go over there to go fund it, which kind of shows you that they want to, the USAID cutting particular funding. They can't get rid of that department because they're going to repurpose it, sort of give more aid to Israel to build up that area and sort of push those people out. And if that gets hindered, they could just say, look, we're being hindered by Iran. Okay, and that will be a license or a proxy to get involved with Iran. And they're already talking about, Mark Rubio was out with Benjamin Netanyahu talking about, we have to stop Iran from nuclear enrichment. And it's not because Iran has nuclear weapons per se, okay? It's because if Iran could use alternative energy opposed to oil, they could start selling oil. They have a bunch of it, and that would put a dent in the monopoly that Turkey and Israel has in exporting oil out to Europe and Asia. So they want to stop that. So a lot of that shit going on over there in the Middle East is about oil. It's about the particular routes of oil, all right? And this shit is really like a mafia thing, man. It's like I said, this thing is really like organized crime. When you really look at how they move and shit, it's really like organized crime where families cut families, shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Billionaires against billionaires, and let them duke it out. I mean, look, the Most High said he's going to set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and that's the fall of every empire division, you know, and this one will be no different. So I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, B'Hashem Yahushai, B'Hashem Rachak. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to hopeful elect out there. You Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in their most truth and sincerity. Shalom. I know there's a shit ton I probably miss. I have to cram. But, you know, Lord willing, we could, you know, stay consistent. Shalom.